Here are tonight's Cash 5 numbers: 3, 2, 16, 35, and 29.
And the Pick 3 numbers 109.
Coming up first tonight, Houston may be back in the football game. Good evening, friends. I'm Dave Ward.
And I'm Shira Fryer. Emotions got heated in Los Angeles today, and now that city is threatening to back out of the NFL game altogether. What happened today, and what does it mean for Houston in bringing the NFL back to the Bayou City? Sports Director Bob Allen joining us now to explain. Bob?
All right, Shira. Today, the key figure in the drive to bring pro football to Los Angeles resigned, quit, walked away from the bargaining table, and there are increasing signs there may be little or no support for public funding for a team, which means Houston's chances of getting that 32nd expansion franchise are looking much better. The folks of L.A. are more than a little miffed by Commissioner Paul Tagliabue's comments of last week that it would take more than $150 million in public money to get a team. And now local leaders in Los Angeles think if that is the case, then the efforts to get a team out there are dying on the vine.
If the condition of bringing an NFL football team to Los Angeles is that the city and the county and the state have to empty their treasury to make these owners wealthier, then I think you can forget about it. They ought to start singing the eyes of Texas, because that's where they're going.
Bill Chadwick was the negotiator appointed by the governor to deal with the NFL and meet the September 15th deadline to have their financial house in order.
Is there more state money available?
I don't really think so. But again, it's very hard to respond to nothing. We're sort of in a position at this point of negotiating with ourselves, which is not something that we're going to do.
And there's the issue of naming rights for their new stadium. Under Chadwick's proposal, any money raised would go to the new owners, which could be well over $100 million. But it irks a lot of people that they want to rename the Los Angeles Coliseum. Back here in Houston, owner Bob McNair has waited patiently while things unravel in L.A., and it doesn't surprise him. I talked with McNair tonight.
Without public participation, you can't have a successful franchise there. So, you know, they've got a very difficult situation. The public sentiment is we don't want to put any money in it. And the reality of the situation is it can't be successful unless you've got a good place to play, and the existing Los Angeles Coliseum is just not adequate. They've got a steep hill to climb in Los Angeles, and I'm glad that it's their problem and not our problem.
Well, the Houston Stadium financing and ownership is in place. NFL owners are seeing that most folks out there just don't care. But they'll wait till the September 15th deadline to make a recommendation, L.A. or Houston. And with the apathy in L.A., there's not a politician out there who will advocate spending public money on the NFL. So things are looking much, much better for Houston tonight. Sheriff, Dave?
Okay. Wild times. Thanks, Bob. Well, power is the key word to describe thunderstorms rolling through the city tonight. Lightning strikes and high wind knocking out power to about 13,000 reliant HLMP customers. We have some time-lapse video of the storm as it passed over the Astrodome area. The loss of power was confined for the most part to the west and southern parts of Houston. Ed Brandon will have a closer look at the situation coming up in his weather segment.
Republicans in Congress reached a compromise tonight on a massive plan to cut taxes, but President Clinton still promises a veto. The proposal would gradually reduce all income tax rates by 1%. It would ease the so-called marriage penalty and would reduce capital gains taxes. But the president thinks that plan announced by the Republicans still calls for too much tax cutting. He says he's afraid of overheating the nation's economy, and he wants to use some of that money for more government spending programs.
Houston police are searching for the suspect who pistol-whipped a store owner in the southeast part of the city this afternoon. The bandits made off with a large amount of cash and merchandise from Melinda's Jewelry. They tied up the store's 3 clerks and assaulted the owner before leaving. Detectives won't confirm just how much loot they grabbed.
A Pasadena grandmother who says she thought her 8-year-old grandson was possessed by spirits is now charged with failure to report child abuse. Wanda Zabala was often the babysitter while that little boy was chained to his bed by his parents. When Child Protective Services discovered the situation in April, the child was severely malnourished. His parents, Christopher and Trina Pope, are now charged with child endangerment. They remain in jail, being held without bond. Zavala is free tonight, but if convicted on the misdemeanor charge, she could spend 6 months in jail. Meet your neighbor and fight crime at the same time. That was the message this evening all over the city during the annual National Night Out. Since 1985, Houston has participated in this event. It seeks to bring neighbors together and share crime prevention information. At the Inwood Forest subdivision, the mayor and police chief were on hand. In that neighborhood and in many others, National Night Out also doubles as a recruiting tool for the area's neighborhood crime watch program.
We have the biggest, or the largest, Citizens on Patrol here in Texas. We're proud of it. We want to get more drivers, keep the streets safe in our subdivision, and hopefully that other subdivisions do the same thing in the city of Houston, and it'll help us all out.
In years past, nearly 60,000 people in Houston have participated in that National Night Out.
A security guard shot and killed 25-year-old John Richard Mooney early this morning because he thought that man was armed and dangerous.
But as Eyewitness News reporter Cynthia Hunt tells us, the family claims that is impossible. Cynthia?
Well, when we first heard this story of what happened at this emergency room overnight, a lot of people thought it was another disturbed gunman in our country with evil intentions. But tonight, when you hear this family talk, you may change your opinion. We talked with his family, Mooney's family, exclusively tonight. This is their story. When an off-duty police officer working security saw this assault weapon, he reacted, shooting and killing its owner, 25-year-old John Mooney.
I can understand. You don't know this person, they're driving up late, there's a gun in the car, you can't understand him, and he opened fire. It's a terrible tragedy.
This is Officer Danny Arriaga's story. He says he was walking toward the emergency room at 12:30 this morning when he saw John Mooney pull up in this car. The officer says he said hi, but he couldn't understand Mooney, so he did a double take and asked him again if he needed help.
And at that point, the officer observed him reach across the front seat of the vehicle towards the passenger side, and that's when the officer observed the rifle. The suspect then began to do something with the rifle. It appeared as though he was going to insert a round into the chamber.
It appeared that way, so the officer began firing.
Did the officer ever say to him, stop, drop the weapon, anything like that?
There was not a verbal exchange at that point due to the time.
Mooney was taken by Lifeline to Herman Hospital, where he later died. Now listen to Mooney's older sister, Brenda, and younger brother, Alan. First, why was Mooney at the hospital?
He was going to the hospital because he had a toothache, an infection in his jaw.
Mooney's employer, who describes him as a friendly, excellent employee, says Mooney left his job as a freight handler early last night because of severe tooth pain. His parents say he came home around 9:30. They offered to take him to the ER. Instead, he took Tylenol and said he would try to tough it out. They went to bed, and the family believes John didn't want to wake his parents and couldn't stand the pain, and around midnight drove himself to the ER.
And since he had an infection in his jaw, I honestly believe that the officer probably could not understand my brother. And my brother was probably trying to get his attention to show he had a rifle.
But why would John have a loaded AR-15 in the car? The family says they were taught to keep guns in the open and show officers when stopped. The family says that John kept the rifle with him because he worked second shift and had a long, late-night drive on the freeway. Also, John is a former United States Marine and likes to target shoot. The family says John is a loving, good man who was misunderstood. Yet they don't blame the officer who shot him. And what do you want this officer to know? You and your family.
We do not blame you. I would like to say that I know you must be going through a hard time because you've taken the life of one of our loved family members and of another human being.
The family had two reasons for speaking tonight. First, they said they wanted to correct the memory of their brother, and they also wanted the officer to know that they held no hard feelings against him. One last note to this story. They said that a lot of misinformation got out today because the Tomball Police Department never questioned them about why Mooney was going to the hospital, and they said that led to a lot of damaging information about his character that was untrue. Live in Tomball, Cynthia Hunt, 13 Eyewitness News.
The drought on the East Coast may hit Houstonians where it hurts, right in their pocketbooks.
That story is still ahead, but first let's check on our hot weather. Here's Ed.
Even with the rainfall, it was the hottest day of the year. Still cloudy outside, 78 degrees here at ABC 13. We'll show you this evening's rainfall and talk about the heat for tomorrow in a few minutes. Stay with us.
Also, did you know you may actually be increasing your risk of skin cancer by using sunscreen? What you need to know before heading out in the sun. And the hefty price the government will have to pay for the Zapruder film.
You're watching ABC 13, Houston's news leader. Live with Dave Ward, Cheryl Fryer, Marvin Zendler, Ed Brandon, and Bob Allen. This is 13 Eyewitness News, Houston's news leader.
Houstonians may soon feel the effects of what some are calling one of the worst droughts of the century.
Now, right now, drought conditions are hitting farmers hard in 9 eastern states. Worse conditions may be in West Virginia. Those farmers are being forced to sell their livestock because the dry weather's causing a feed shortage. It's a problem consumers may soon feel at the grocery store.
Dairy cows won't die, but the production is going to go way down. And I estimate that it could be up to a 40-cent increase per gallon in milk nationally.
Federal government is now offering low-interest loans to farmers in 6 eastern states so they can get water and hay for their livestock. The corn crop is also suffering. Farmers in West Virginia and in Ohio say their crops are now a total loss. The drought is not expected to affect fruit and vegetable crops in California and Florida or grain crops in the Midwest. The government is cracking down on travel agencies working scams against vacationers. Today, the Federal Trade Commission announced lawsuits against 5 travel companies for defrauding customers by not disclosing the full terms and costs of their trips. Some travelers complain of being offered free hotel stays, only to find out they have to pay hiked-up airline fares. Some consumers also say they ended up in filthy hotels when they were promised resorts. A panel of arbitrators split the difference today, awarding the Zapruder family $16 million for the famous film of President Kennedy's assassination. That film is now in the National Archives as property of the federal government, although the family retains copyright. The Zapruder family asked for $30 million, while the government offered $1 million. This is not the Zapruder film that you're seeing now. The family charges a large fee every time that home movie is broadcast.
The largest speed hump program in the nation has just hit a bump in the road. We're talking about the city of Houston, which has announced it's cutting back on the number of new speed humps. An outcry by citizens over speeding cars led former Mayor Bob Lanier to launch that program. But now some citizens don't want the speed humps for what they do to their own cars and how they impede emergency vehicles, ambulances, and fire trucks trying to reach emergency scenes.
We're going to be installing less speed humps because the demand has decreased from citizens who want to have humps installed on their neighborhood residential streets.
The city has put over 2,200 speed humps on 640 Houston streets since 1995. That's an average 550 humps per year. Houston will now place only about 60 to 70 new humps each year.
Will we get a break from this heat?
Weatherman Ed Brandon has the answer coming up.
Today we had the most widespread rain we've had in quite a while in southeast Texas. Most folks got a decent amount of rainfall. Most folks, however, got less than an inch. This is what Storm Tracker shows right now. Do not be confused. That is not really rainfall. That's ground clutter. The atmosphere is very moist out there, and the radar beams are going places other than to look at rainfall. But this is what we looked at between 6 o'clock and 9:30 this evening. We'll let the sequence start, and you will see an outflow boundary. You see us talk about these all the time. There it is, moving down to the southwest through the Houston area. That outflow boundary caused by thunderstorms early in the day over in western Louisiana and East Texas moved into our area, and along that boundary, thunderstorms formed during the early evening hours in Houston. As a result, in southern Harris County, northern Brazoria County, and northern Galveston County, some folks had 3 to 4 inches of rainfall in that very isolated area. For most people in southeast Texas, there was not that much rainfall. This is what we were looking at early in the evening on Doppler 13. The shower activity, as we said, moved from northeast to southwest, and for the most part, it is all gone. Here's what we had statistically during the day today. Our overnight low last night, 75 degrees in Houston. The high this afternoon, 98. That's right, the hottest day of the year so far. We had 0.05 of an inch of rain, 1/20th of an inch here at ABC 13. At 10 o'clock, it's 77 degrees at Bush Intercontinental Intercontinental Airport, 78 here, 77 at Hobby. The dew point 74 degrees, relative humidity 90%, no wind. The barometer 30 inches of mercury and rising. Around the state of Texas, a hot day everywhere with the 100s concentrated in the north and central portions of the state. Got to 100 at College Station this afternoon and 94 degrees on Galveston Island. It doesn't often get that hot down there. You can tell where the moisture's coming from. It's coming off the Gulf of Mexico, moving from east to west. If we get rain tomorrow, it'll come from the same direction, but the chance of rain tomorrow is a little bit lower than it was today. That frontal system we watched for the past several days still stationary across the eastern part of the country. Temperatures rather pleasant up here, but still very warm and muggy from the Texas coast all the way around to Florida. The forecast calls for a slight chance of rain tomorrow, but more likely just some very hot and humid weather, including an ozone watch for Wednesday. Our low tonight again will be in the mid-70s. A high tomorrow afternoon in the mid-90s. A 10% chance of rain on Wednesday, 20% on Thursday, and 30% on Friday. That's it.
Okay, thanks, Ed. Well, if you use sunscreen, you may unknowingly be increasing your risk of skin cancer. Not because the sunscreens are bad, but according to a study in the Journal of the National Cancer Institute, people who use stronger sunscreens tend to spend more time outside in the sun. And they say they just don't feel the effects of sunburn as quickly.
All that talk about exposing infants to classical music to increase their brain power may be bunk. It's called the Mozart effect. Previous research suggested that listening to classical music for children under the age of 3 helped wire the synapses of their developing brains. But researchers at the McDonald Foundation in St. Louis say the results of that study can't be reproduced or even measured. In fact, they say the premise that a baby's first 3 years are the critical time in development of their brain power is simply overblown.
Marvin Zindler and a teenager have a lot in common.
Coming up, you may be surprised to see the bond they share.
Action 13's Marvin Zindler tonight helps a teenager with a problem that they both share.
It's a personal problem, but Marvin doesn't mind talking about it at all.
Talking about it? Well, I've been talking about it for 45 years. Sandra may not realize it, but we have something in common. We're both cat lovers. I have 2 cats, too, and Sandra will be going to my hair doctor soon. At 15, Sandra is already losing her hair.
I was kind of at my wit's end on about what to do. It wasn't so bad when she was younger, but now that she's going into high school and boys, you know, will start coming around and calling and stuff like that, and I didn't want her to feel that she always had to wear her hair up.
Sandra's been wearing her hair up for 4 years to cover up her hair loss.
I've gone to 3 doctors, and they all came to the same conclusion, that I have female pattern baldness, and they've gave me medicines like Rogaine.
And nothing helped?
No.
And so they say there's nothing they can do for you as far as medication is concerned?
Yes.
That's why I've arranged for Sandra to go to my hair doctor, Tom Maglioro. Oh, this is the office of my hair doctor. Here are just 2 of Tom's clients. He works with lots of women.
Half our clients are female. Female pattern hair loss is becoming a very major issue in the United States. There are 20 million women with hair loss.
I talked with Tom, my hair doctor, who, by the way, is not a real doctor, about this teenager's hair loss problem.
We'll get real hair, the same color and texture as hers, and then non-surgically attach it to her own skin, and it will be a part of her on a daily basis.
Can she swim? What can she do with it?
She can treat it just the same as her own hair. She'll be able to swim, shower, shampoo. The only difference is that once a month she'll need to come back in here for her haircut so we can reattach it again.
And let me ask you this, the important question. The family does not have the money to take care of this. Can you handle this for them?
Be my pleasure to help her, Marvin.
Good news to Sandra and her mother.
That'd be great. That would be great.
Well, it's always good to have friends like my hair doctor, Tom Magliora. Tom and his wife, Randy, also give a lot to charity, and they're just downright good folks. Marvin Zindler, Eyewitness News.
Well, the Arrows set to name a new head coach. Bob Allen's up next to tell you who's going to lead them.
And the Astros bats come alive tonight for Mike Hampton, looking for his 15th win tonight against the Dodgers.
What we didn't show you is that
Okay, let's see what's happening with the Astros tonight.
Here's Bob Allen. Bobby.
All right, David, Sheriff Mike Hampton was looking for win number 15, which would tie him with the Major League leaders, Hampton and the first-place Astros, against the last-place Dodgers in the Astrodome tonight, down 1-0 in the third with 2 outs. Spire singles in Biggio. That would tie it at 1. Still with 2 outs, this would have been the third out, but Beltre misses it. Bagwell safe on first. Then Belk takes it to right field. Spire scores. Astros take the lead. And Lance Berkman, who's been coming up huge since coming up from New Orleans to right field. Bagwell comes in. It's 3-1. Then Paul Bacco singles to center field. Bell and Berkman score, making it 5-1, all with 2 outs in the third inning. Mike Hampton playing some defense. The double play, Hampton covering first, got him. Hampton gets win number 15. Bob Boudreau enjoying himself at the ball game. Astros win it 7-2. On the scoreboard, Cincinnati over Colorado, so the Astros still have that 2.5 game lead. Philadelphia beats Florida. Pittsburgh over Atlanta. Montreal knocks off Chicago. New York over Milwaukee. St. Louis shutting out San Diego. No hits for Gwynn, no homers for McGuire. Cleveland over Boston. Chicago over Detroit. Toronto beats New York, and Texas is leading Minnesota in the 7th inning. The tempers of Atlanta Braves catcher Eddie Perez cost him 4 games and his manager 2 games. Perez today suspended for 4 when he went ballistic on Phillies pitcher Paul Byrd after Byrd tried to nicely explain to him that he didn't intentionally throw at him. Instead of accepting that, Perez shoved Byrd, smacked him upside the head with his glove, after which the predictable bench is emptied. His manager Bobby Cox had already been kicked out for arguing before, but came back on the field when the brawl broke out. Thus, his 2-game suspension. John Smoltz was ejected from the game earlier for retaliation, but he wasn't suspended. Tomorrow at 1:30, the Arrows will officially announce that Ron Lowe will be the new head coach and general manager, replacing Dave Tippett, who's gone on to be an assistant with the Los Angeles Kings. Lowe spent the last 4.5 seasons as head coach of the NHL Edmonton Oilers. He resigned last June because he refused to be the lowest paid coach in the NHL. He was offered $450,000 Canadian to return the same amount he made last year. He says he resigned out of principle. Lowe's regular season record 139, 162, and 40, but he did coach the Oilers to 2 major first-round upsets in the playoffs in 97 and 98. In the NBA, Boston and Denver pulling off a 6-player deal going to Denver from Boston. Swingman Ron Mercer, forward Popeye Jones, center Dwayne Schnitsius, and headed east to Boston are forwards Danny Fortson and Eric Williams, along with guard Eric Washington. Boston also gets a first-round pick. The key players in the deal, Fortson and Mercer. Mike Tyson was back in jail today, but this time he was only visiting. Tyson was in Phoenix and was brought out to promote Maricopa County Sheriff Joe Arpaio's tent city for prisoners. Tyson's familiar with such institutions, having recently been released from a Maryland jail after a probation violation. He schmoozed and handed out donuts to the prisoners in the 100-degree heats.
I don't know why they should listen what not to do to me. If anything, I don't know why they listen to me, but I'm just here. Sheriff Joe invited me here, and he's a friend of mine, and I'm just happy to come.
Why should they listen to him? We gave him free donuts.
That's a good reason.
Good deal.
That's a luxury.
Thanks, Bob. Well, coming up, a Danish golfer becomes a lightning rod.
Stay with us.
Before we go tonight, golfer Anders Rasmussen of Denmark didn't let a little thing like lightning stand in the way of his golf game. The Danish duffer got hit by a bolt of lightning when a brief thunderstorm interrupted the finals of the Danish Golf Championship. His fellow golfers say they saw the lightning hit his umbrella. They saw sparks flying from his fingertips. But he was unhurt except for some slight hand tremors, and he says he considers it a good omen. Rasmussen played on and finished 11th in the tournament.
It's always a good omen if you live. That's our report for tonight. Stay tuned for Nightline, followed by Politically Incorrect. And join Tom Cook and Cheryl Keck for Eyewitness News at 5:30 a.m.
For Sheriff Fryer, Bob Allen, Ed Brandon, and Marvin Zindler, I'm Dave Ward. We thank you for being with us. Hope you have a wonderful day tomorrow, and good night.
Good night, everyone.